Good morning, traders. Today's the 28th of June. This is Brad Matheny. It is Friday. It is our big crush day. This is our Plan Your Trade or my Plan Your Trade video series continuing. We're looking at a daily SPY chart. You can see the lines, the vertical lines that I've drawn, highlighting what I expected to be price activity over the last couple of days. Today, we have a crush pattern. I will highlight that we never did reach the highs that I expected back up in this area. Very solid move, though. You can see we started back over here on this day. I predicted a downward day. It happened. I predicted a downward day. It happened. I predicted a downward low trying to reach support down in this area. That's exactly what happened. I predicted a reversal back to the upside, which is what happened. I predicted a move that I thought might be able to get back up into this 548, 547 and a half area. Never happened, but still was an up day. I predicted another up day yesterday, sideways, kind of rotating, and today is our crush pattern. A crush pattern typically is a fairly strong downward trend. Now, we'll take a look at the futures market here in a moment, but let's come back in here to the 30-minute and spread this apart. And remember that at this point, we're looking at the crush pattern as a potential for a move to retest back down here, possibly 542, 543, maybe. You can see I've drawn this box here. Get this near the top, because this is probably going to be our support area. 542, 543. We got a lot of data coming in today, especially after the presidential debates yesterday, which I'm not going to comment on. Just they are what they are. It's over. It's done. What has changed from today versus yesterday? Not much. I mean, it's still pretty much the same. And we'll see how the markets react to any future activity. What I do believe, though, is that the markets, the SPY, will probably open in the 544.50 area, my opinion. Move downwards, struggle, maybe bounce base, and then maybe move into an upward squeeze near the end of today. What would that look like? Basically downward activity, consolidation, and then possibly a fairly aggressive recovery back to the upside, setting up a very deep low. So it would look almost like a hammer, if you guys know what I'm talking about, setting up an open in this area, which would be a box kind of like this. And then, and then we would get some sort of a hammer pattern, kind of like this, off of the low. And we would be looking at possibly a white hammer. Okay. Try this again. So we would possibly be looking at some kind of a white hammer like this. And so the kind of tough to do with this drawing. Let me see if I can move this. No. Well, you get the idea. So maybe opens here, maybe comes down, maybe comes all the way back up, closes a little higher, or we could end up here with it being a black hammer, which could end up being down. And that would end up being basically opens up here, or that would actually have to be more like this. Opens here, kind of a doji bar setting up like this, showing some potential rotation back to the upside. Now, remember, next week, I think we move into really solid rallying. So I think this is, again, an overall general rotation in the market, struggling to get away from this area. And I think this big news Friday is going to drive market price down into this 542, 543 and a half area, looking for support, probably somewhere above 543. And then we're going to move into a rally phase into next week and maybe the end of today. So let's go over and take a look at the ES. ES is currently on a 30-minute basis. It looks like it's 565. Looks like the news just hit. What we're looking at here, we've had this rotation. What we would be looking at here on the ES is maybe about a half a percentage point down. So let's figure that out. So about a half, maybe 3/4 of a percentage point down. So we would be looking at a move maybe like this into this area, finding support and then trying to move higher. And that would be a pretty good indication here. Now, remember, we have this range. So I like to use what I call rejection areas. So we do have our support again, right in this area, the 382 to 50 area. And of course, I made my last box black. So this one looks black. I will fix that. Green and dark green. And of course, it's too heavy. So we set it up like this. And then we have the deep 682 level right down here in this area. So this is where essentially you would be looking for a very deep low move would be in this area. That would be, in my opinion, a decent little area to look for the market to set up some sort of a base and a move higher. Now, what a move higher would look like would be, and I'm just going to draw it, coming down, setting up a base, moving a bit higher, setting up a higher low, and then starting to rally. So what you really want to do is see this higher low kind of move, indicating that we've got some sort of a base setup. Until we see that, like I said, don't really jump into the move too early unless you're willing to withstand, this extra, what looks like a 1/4%. Yeah, about a 1/4% downturn. Okay, so let's go to the NASDAQ futures, see what's going on there. Again, same type of setup. I can almost do this on every chart. Go to the rejection point, come up here. We've got rejection here. I'm going to call that the same rejection level here. We come back over here. We do our support level, 382 to 50. We come back here. We highlight our 618 level down over in this area. And what we're looking at really is a downward crush pattern coming down into this area, trying to find some support, maybe basing and rallying into the end of the day. Now, that rally, as I've drawn in almost every chart, is under the premise that we may see a short squeeze at the end of the day. Remember, whatever news comes in today could drive the market downward, but at the end of the day, I think they're going to realize that the economy is going to keep producing. We're coming into Q2 earnings, and I think a rally phase is really going to be the next big change here. Early July, we're going to get into Q2 earnings, and I think we're going to be moving quite a bit higher. So now we'll take a look at the QQQs, probably the same setup. A little bit deeper. I looked at this yesterday. You can see how we've come down into this 382 to 50 resistance level. So try to move this a little higher. There we go. And then here we have our 382 support. We have our 618 down here. So again, highlighting where we would be with this. Here's our drawn bar projecting what's going to happen. We're going to be looking at maybe an opening in this area, 480.5, possibly moving down into this area, maybe a bit deeper, and then moving back into some sort of an upward squeeze. Now, remember, upward squeeze could be ending, kind of in this area, or maybe this area, or maybe even higher, depending on what happens throughout the end of the day. So I'm not suggesting that this is going to be a deep move, meaning ending with a very solid downward swing. What I'm suggesting is it's going to be a large range bar, potentially heading downward, wiping out what my friend would call air, and the way he would say it. And you know who I'm talking about, Kurt. Air is open here. You see how this is pushed all the way up? Well, this creates a lot of open air in this area. So we have this area here where we could come down, fill this area, and then roll back out of it. And that's the way I interpret his comments with air. We had the same type of scenario here where you can see from way up here, we come down, oops, we come down into this area as we're moving downward, and this gives us a lot of air in this area to potentially fill. So as we came all the way back up here, tried to fill this area, you can see it filled a lot of this air through this rotation. And I guess the easiest way to measure air would be to probably work on the 764 area down to about the 382 or 1/4 area. And you can see I've done the same thing here to 1/4 and 762. So here's our air kind of area right here, down to about a 764, 764. So we move this down a little bit. There's our air. Air is basically between the 764 and the 25 area. And you can see here as we start to move higher, we've got this as our rejection point here. You can see we've come up, hit this peak, rejected, and that gives us a very solid 762 to 25 air area here. And where we would be looking at with this is basically the 618. So we could move a little higher than the 618 like we had here. But if we were to get down to this 618 area, which is actually right here, then that would coincide with our 25, 0.25 area right here. And I would be looking at this as a very deep low, fulfilling the air content, and then moving higher off of a squeeze. So be aware that we're looking like we're going to see a pretty solid downward move this morning and rotate into rally mode over the next couple of weeks or next week. And that's going to lead to, I believe, the QQQ moving all the way up into 488, possibly 490, the SPY moving all the way up into the 550 area, possibly even higher, possibly up into the 556, 558. And again, we could continue to rally out of this. So with regards to the SPY cycle pattern, it'll be real interesting to see how this plays out here. Remember, go back to the daily chart and spread this out, because I know you won't be able to see it the way I've drawn everything. But you really have to ask yourself, was he able, meaning me, to accurately predict price trends 5, 6, 7, 8 days in advance? Well, right now, all you have to do is look at these bars and understand that the cycle patterns gave me an indication of what price would potentially do. I applied that based on my knowledge of the market and what would likely happen, and drew these vertical lines, highlighting what I thought would happen. I also highlighted this red line. I'll change the color, make it a dark red, bring it to the front. This was my expectation of what price would do. Okay, I drew this from the very beginning, saying that we would see a rotation downward, trying to find support in this area, roll back up, and then roll back down today, and then rolling up, going all the way into next week. You can see how I've drawn this, moving higher, 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 higher. And of course, this was done over 7 days ago. So we'll see if this move happens, deep low, if it sets up, if we end up getting this downward rotation and then start to move higher into the end of next week. Boy, I mean, ask yourself, how many people do you know that can accurately or attempt to accurately pinpoint price moves like this 5, 6, 7, 10 days in advance? Now, I will add a caveat. I can't do this 100% of the time. I wish I could. I think that I'm probably about 70, 80% of the time accurate as far as reading these trends. I do my best to try to help people learn to become better traders and learn to trade when efficient. For example, today you got a great opportunity. The downside initially, I wouldn't chase it down below, 543, 543 and a quarter. But I would then look for that basing bottoming setup, like I told you, on the 30-minute, which would give us a pretty strong indication that we're going to see some type of upward squeeze move near the end of the day. So again, looking over here, if we get that big sell off today and end up down below 543, then look for the base, look for the rolling bottom with the higher lows, and then we might see some sort of a squeeze, might be quite aggressive at the end of the day. Okay. Well, again, follow me. Check out what I do. Remember, I'm here to try to help you. And if I can do one thing, it's to provide you information you don't know and don't have. That is to use my cycle patterns and my resources, my tools to make you better aware of what is actually going to happen. So here we go. Let's see what happens on Friday and enjoy your weekend.